This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Brett Baer in Washington. One more step tonight in the high-stakes game of political chicken over Homeland Security funding. The Senate has once again failed to advance a bill to fund the agency and overturn President Obama's executive action on immigration. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is on Capitol Hill with the breaking news tonight. Good evening, Mike.
Well, Brett, good evening. The vote is still open, but there are already 44 noes, and so the Democratic filibuster of a House-passed GOP DHS funding bill continues. Time is running short.
Democrats say they want the ability to amend DHS funding legislation, but then they keep voting to block their own ability to offer amendments. It just doesn't make any sense.
Earlier, the president spoke to the nation's governors about the possibility of Homeland Security employees going to work next week without getting paid.
They all work in your states. These are folks who, if they don't have a paycheck, are not going to be able to spend that money in your states. It will have a direct impact on your economy, and it will have a direct impact on America's national security.
In a letter to agency staff obtained by Fox, Secretary Jay Johnson wrote, quote, "We must plan and prepare in the unlikely and unfortunate event that Congress does not fund DHS before Friday night and a shutdown of this department occurs."
The clock is ticking, and as I stand here, there is nothing from Congress to fund us beyond that point. The American public needs to understand the consequences of permitting a shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security.
West Virginia Democrat Senator Joe Manchin says he believes the president overstepped on immigration, but says it has nothing to do with funding DHS. And the top Democrat on the Senate Homeland Security Committee has said he believes the president should have given Congress more time to work on immigration, but said it is too dangerous now to risk shutting down an agency.
Why cut off the funding for that department is crazy. If you have a problem with what the president's done, go to court. Just go to, that's what the states have done, and they've won a minor victory down in a district court in Texas.
The Justice Department has asked U.S. District Judge Andrew Hanen to lift his temporary hold on the president's executive action. And a key national security Republican said allowing the immigration fight to play out in the courts would be a smart way out of this funding jam.
The Texas District Court judge ruled it unconstitutional. Right. Let's put all of our energy in supporting the court case. And for God's sakes, don't shut down the premier Homeland Security defense line called the Department of Homeland Security. If we do, as Republicans, we'll get blamed.
The latest on the vote count is 48 to 45, with Republicans needing 60 votes to break the filibuster. Republican sources indicate a potential plan B would be a more narrow-focused bill to just go after the president's immigration plan from last fall, a more narrow focus trying to pick up some Democrat support. Brett?
Mike Emanuel live on the Hill with the breaking news. Mike, thanks. As the battle for Homeland Security funding continues, it is business as usual, almost, at the Bloomington, Minnesota shopping mall, singled out for attack by al-Qaeda-linked terrorists over the weekend. The administration reaction seems to fly in the face of President Obama's recent comments blaming the media for its "if it bleeds, it leads" philosophy. Correspondent Doug McKelway is in Bloomington, Minnesota tonight.
I would say that if anyone is planning to go to the Mall of America today, they've got to be particularly careful.
A stunning warning from a man and an administration who've traditionally played down terror threats, one that stood in contrast to a later joint statement from the Mall of America, local and federal authorities, which said in part, quote, "At this time, there's no credible threat associated with the Mall of America." Secretary Johnson appeared on all 5 Sunday talk shows a day after the Somalia-based al-Qaeda affiliate al-Shabaab released an hour-long video threatening to attack the Mall of America near Minneapolis and another in Canada, shopping centers in London and elsewhere. The warning also came in advance of this week's congressional vote on DHS funding, raising questions whether Johnson's TV blitz was part political, designed to force Republicans to support funding for the president's executive actions that would block deportation of millions of illegals.
National security is an issue that typically is above partisanship and above sort of using political leverage. And so, is he trying to sort of exert some leverage by suggesting, look, we have real threats out there that need to be addressed?
The State Department today appeared to tamp down the urgency of Johnson's warning.
Our view is it's propaganda. Of course, we need to remain vigilant, as always is the case, but The point of this video was to instill fear.
White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest was pressed on whether Johnson may have overstated the threat.
No, I think the Secretary was noting how important it is for the American people to continue to be vigilant. That said, the intelligence community has said that they are not aware of any specific credible plot against the Mall of America or any other domestic commercial shopping center here in the United States.
Al-Shabaab is a well-known perpetrator of horrific violence, carrying out the September 2013 attack at an upscale mall in Nairobi, Kenya, that killed more than 60. The Mall of America, just outside of Minneapolis, is the largest in the U.S., drawing 40 million people a year. The Twin Cities are also home to the largest Somali immigrant community in the U.S. In recent years, at least 22 of them left to join Al-Shabaab, 15 left to join ISIS. One community organizer here says ideology, not poverty, drives them to jihad.
The problem is these kids have been indoctrinated, they have been brainwashed, and this is a war on ideology.
Camera crews were not allowed inside the mall today, but in a guided tour, a Fox News colleague did see a large police presence, at least 4 bomb-sniffing dogs. She was given a tour of a dispatch center which featured hundreds of TV screens of every nook and cranny of this mall, and she was assured that all packages were being screened and swabbed for explosive residue. Brett, back to you.
Doug McKelway outside the Mall of America. Doug, thank you. President Obama is signaling a new willingness to compromise on some of the specifics in his request for military authorization to go after ISIS. This comes as we get more evidence of just how serious the terrorists are about mounting a long-term assault. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry has the latest.
As ISIS released new video showing boys as young as 5 being trained as the next generation of warriors, authorities revoked the passports of 6 French citizens amid an investigation that uncovered they were traveling to Syria imminently with jihad plans, while French warplanes stepped up airstrikes against ISIS targets in Iraq.
Welcome, everyone.
In Kuwait, new U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter declared ISIS is not invincible, even as he convened a high-level meeting of U.S. military commanders that delivered a sobering assessment of the terror group.
Our discussion this afternoon affirmed the seriousness and the complexity of the threat posed by ISIL, especially in an interconnected and networked world.
Carter also used a weekend visit to Kabul to again open the door to leaving more U.S. troops behind for a longer period, despite President Obama repeatedly declaring the war in Afghanistan is over, which is why Republican Lindsey Graham said he's heartened that administration officials are signaling they may also get more flexible with the language on ground troops in order to get the authorization of the use of military force against ISIS passed by Congress.
So listen to the generals for a change, Mr. President. If you had embedded trainers at the battalion level with all the other support networks, you're around 10,000, and we'd have a really good chance of winning in Iraq.
The president faced harsh criticism today from the family of Kayla Mueller, one of 3 American hostages killed by ISIS. Kayla's brother telling NBC News that getting her released was made harder by the swap of Sergeant Bo Bergdahl for 5 Taliban prisoners.
That made the whole situation worse, because that's when the demands got greater, they got larger. They realized that they had something. They realized that, well, if they're going to let 5 people go for 1 person, why won't they do this or why won't they do that?
The president's spokesman, Josh Earnest, responded by saying officials cannot imagine how much pain the family is experiencing.
And these families are in a particularly difficult position because the United States does have a policy that is clearly in our best interests and clearly in the best interests of the American people and our national security to not make concessions and to not negotiate with terrorists. And in this case, with Kayla Mueller's hostage takers.
But given that policy, Kayla's father told NBC that he asked the president directly, why was it okay to negotiate directly with the Taliban but not with ISIS? It's not clear that he got a satisfactory answer, Brett.
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. Up next, the national media scrutiny intensifies for Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, who's thinking about running for president, as we've reported. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 29 in Philadelphia with a tanker truck explosion on a major highway in southern New Jersey. The truck was carrying nearly 90,000 gallons of fuel. It overturned going up an on-ramp. The driver escaped. No word yet on what led to that crash. Fox Connecticut and Hartford with 11 college students overdosing on the party drug known as Molly. 2 of the students from Wesleyan University are listed in critical condition, 2 others in serious condition. Molly is a powdered form of ecstasy. And this is a live look at the Bay Area from KTVU in San Francisco. The big story there tonight, port operations returning to normal in Oakland and all up and down the West Coast following a labor agreement. Dock workers are now trying to deal with a major backlog of work. It's believed that will take several months. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway. From Special Report, we'll be right back.